Welcome into the Big Little Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Patrick Previty. That is Andrew Greig. We've been off for about a few days now. We've missed a couple of the NBA Finals games, but ever since then, Oklahoma City has taken a commanding lead in this series 3-2. Tyrese Halliburton dealing with the calf strain now. So we'll start very broad here. Is this series over?
I think for all intents and purposes, you can say that this series is over, especially given the fact that Tyrese Halliburton, their best player, is dealing with a hamstring injury. I knew that this is I feel like the Pacers have just hung in there for as long as they possibly could, even with Tyrese Halliburton having 4 points in Game 5 and dealing with an injury throughout the majority of that game. They were able to hang around and give the Thunder all that they could really wish to handle. Obviously, they ended up pulling away from them towards the later stages of that game, but still, the Pacers team just as a whole has stepped up to the challenge and has performed drastically better than I don't think anybody could have imagined during this whole playoff run. But I think that the series is just about over, especially given the fact that you don't even know Tyrese Halliburton's status going into Game 6.
Yeah, as you mentioned, most of this team has stepped up. I mean, Miles Turner was iffy through the first 4 games. He was pretty good in Game 5, but the Thunder are just simply the best team in the NBA. And as much as the Pacers have been like the team of destiny, if you will, they're not going to be able to handle a 4-point game from Tyrese Halliburton or any sort of under 10-point performance from him, no matter how good TJ McConnell or any of the other players are playing. I mean, Pascal Siakam had 28 points in Game 5, and that's usually a recipe for this team to win a game in the playoffs. Now, the Thunder are just top to bottom. They look like a better team, and if Halliburton gives it a go and isn't close to 100%, I just don't see how they can win in Game 6. I mean, granted, they are at home, so that is a big plus for them. Maybe they can feed off the home crowd and kind of get that game, but even if it went Game 7, I mean, I'd like to think it's just a coin flip, right? But this Thunder team, I just don't see how they can lose both of these next 2 games. It's just going to be too much for them.
Yeah, and we both mentioned Tyrese Halliburton, but on the other side of that, when the Thunder's top 2 players give them 71 points and they are not getting as much help from Chet or some of their other bench players, but still, when Jalen Williams and SGA are going off for 70 plus points, it's going to be tough to win either way, especially with the way they play defense and make it so hard for you to just play your style of offense. I think that one of the main points that always gets underscored with OKC, which they love bringing up a lot, is the fact that they do play such tough defense. At some point, I think they had 4 steals straight in the fourth quarter, and that really just helped them pull away from the Pacers. And it's just hard if you don't have the main engine of your offense, like we've been mentioning with Tyrese Halliburton getting anything to go, and multiple times during the course of this series, and then now actually facing what looks to be a decently serious injury, and at least keep him. We'll see how he plays, but I think that if you're getting so much from the other side of the ball in the Thunder and also getting their defensive presence in game in and game out, I don't think that there's a path for the Pacers to win the series, which is super unfortunate just because I feel like the Pacers have just been the story of these playoffs and how and leading up to it, not as much, but they've just completely exceeded every single expectation that anybody had going into them. At some a lot of people were calling for the Bucks to win their first round series, and then nobody really picked them against the Cavaliers. And then even the Knicks series, a lot of people had the Knicks favored. So to come this far, I feel like everyone has to give the props to the Pacers team, and this could be a team that's a threat for years. But I think that the next step for this team is just having Tyrese Halliburton be consistently good in the playoffs.
Yeah, consistency is definitely key for him. I mean, even before this injury, you had pointed it out plenty of times, and I was defending him. I was trying to have some pushback on it, but having 4 points in a pivotal Game 5 is just not going to cut it for this team. And as you mentioned, Jalen Williams, you finally kind of got that game, that performance out of him in this series where he had 40 points, and that just sets this team above every other team in the NBA. If he can play well, you are already banking that Shea is going to get his 30 points. He's been phenomenal for just about every single quarter of this series. I mean, he had that one bad stretch. It was a Game 4, or it was a Game 4 or Game 3. But
Game 4, the first half or first 2.5 quarters, but then in the fourth quarter, he just immediately
yeah, what do you have? 15 points in that fourth quarter? I think you told me that right before we got on. If he's going to average 32 points in this series, they really only need one of their guys, Jalen Williams or Chet Holmgren, to step up if Tyrese Halliburton is only going to have 8 points in a game. I mean, no matter what TJ McConnell produces off the bench, and he's been great this series off the bench, they're going to have an answer for that in some sort of fashion. And if those two guys, as you mentioned, combine for over 70 points, I just don't see how the Pacers can make up for it unless they had another playoff hero of their own step up. And it's just simply going to be, it's just going to be too much. Okay. So with this going into game 6, do you think Tyrese Halliburton should actually try to play in this game? I mean, I know a lot of people are comparing it to the KD potential. You could tear your Achilles in about 12 minutes of play here. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to give it a go. I don't know if it's that serious, but obviously with calf strains, you're worried that Achilles could go at any moment.
Yeah, I think that the age difference between Kevin Durant and Tyrese Halliburton at that stage of like their careers is probably something to keep in mind. I feel like Kevin Durant was a lot older when he was like trying to give it a go and then play off of an injury, and Tyrese Halliburton still has that youthful like exuberance around him. But I think that he goes and tries to play this game just because it could be the last game of their season. I don't know if that'll be a plus or a minus for them. I mean, even like in the games where he has like towards the beginning of the series where he was healthy, games 1 and 2, he just played completely terribly. And it wasn't like, it didn't feel like it was much of an injury like that was holding him back. It was just him not playing as well. So given the fact that he will also be dealing with something possibly a little bit more serious going into this next game, I don't know if it will help or hurt the Pacers, but he's been like the best player on this team like for an extended period of time now. If he wants to give it a go, I don't see how you don't start him, and I don't see how he doesn't play like a lot of minutes until it is literally a detriment to your team, like him on the court rather than off of it.
It's kind of almost crazy to say that this team just doesn't have enough without Tyrese Halliburton for how deep this squad is, but it's just simply because it's a matchup against the Thunder. I honestly think that this Pacers team could have done without Tyrese Halliburton in any of their 3 playoff series in the Eastern Conference for just a game, and they would have been okay. But in this Thunder series, I just don't think that that's possible. They've got 8 guys in double figures. I mean, this is actually kind of crazy just even looking at this, because you're just adding TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin, and those guys are both averaging 11 points. You're thinking, okay, maybe one of them steps up. TJ McConnell, I guess, would start, or in some sort of fashion, maybe you've got Neesmith or Nembhard or something like that, and they end up starting, however you want to do it. But they should be able to have enough scoring. They don't without Tyrese Halliburton in this series going up against the Thunder. And if Chet Holmgren plays well, this is absolutely wraps. I think he's got to, just to keep his team alive. Now, minutes restriction, maybe you try to save him for the end of the game whenever you think he's going to be better. I know a lot of people are talking about, like, is it worth it? I'm glad that you at least mentioned that perhaps it's not actually a possibility that he tears his Achilles in this sort of sense, that he's not as old as Kevin Durant was. And Kevin Durant was out for an extended period of time. So I think his calf strain was like at the very, very like end of the spectrum as far as like it is the worst that you possibly could, because he tore it in 12 minutes and he was out for multiple series, I believe, in that playoff run that the Warriors had. So at least that might be something that helps him kind of get out there and play, where it's the actual likelihood of him tearing his Achilles isn't that high. But it's going to be wraps regardless, I think, if he does or doesn't. So maybe that also goes into it too.
Yeah, now I want to pose a question to you based off the fact that that Tyrese Halliburton has had the series that he's had, even up until this injury. Where do you stand on his superstar status at this point?
I can't. I don't know if I could give you a straight answer, and I hate how that even sounds. I mean, he's averaging 15 points in this finals, and like this run has been so amazing that it's tough for me to just take it away from him even after I gave it to him. Like going into the finals, saying he was a superstar, he's on a different level than a lot of other players in the NBA, and I do truly believe that, and I don't think that he's overrated, but I can kind of see, I see it both ways. There's a massive difference between Tyrese Halliburton and like what Steph Curry was when he won his first championship, what Shea is right now, what, potentially other bona fide superstars are. But like, I think he's definitely got to be ahead of guys like Jalen Brunson, dare I say Anthony Edwards, and then like that maybe puts him in no man's land. I mean, obviously this team is 2 games away from winning the championship still. And it's tough for me to take that mantle away. He's had some pretty rough moments, but I would still say Jason Tatum's a superstar, and his finals history and record isn't as positive. And I would have said Jason Tatum was a superstar even before they won last year. So I'm probably putting him on that fringe spot still. I'm still behind Tyrese Halliburton in that sense, but it's tough to give you a straight answer. This is a really kind of sad way to go out, especially if he doesn't play in game 6. It's just like, he like wasn't there to be, not like he can really control it because he's injured, but just a really kind of sucky way to go out if you're a superstar. I know that I already know your opinion on this. I know he's not a superstar, not trying to take away anything from him, but it's a high honor for sure.
Yeah, and I think that my opinion has maybe been like a little overstated just because given the fact that like the bar is just so high for what a superstar in my opinion is. But like I think that like I can't none of his like performances like up until this point have been like deniable. Like he has had the big shots and he is the driver on this team no matter who wins the Eastern Conference MVP or whatever. Like it is like he is the driver of this team. He is the reason why they are in the finals. And I think that is something that needs to be like said. But I just think that there is a level that Tyrese Halliburton isn't at yet, just in terms of consistency and being able to consistently generate like points, like in terms of scoring, rather than just like passing the ball and waiting for your team or not waiting for your teammates, but making your teammates better and elevating them. But like I just don't his scoring just isn't there yet for me to put him in the superstar category, and that is like saying that like he's just outside of it. Like while you have him on like the fringe inside of it, I maybe have him on like the fringe, like maybe a little bit farther out than that, but very close to like being in that category as well. Maybe another season where he averages like 23 and 10 and it has another good like playoff run, then I'm probably right there with you.
Maybe my judgment is slightly clouded from all of the playoff, like the late game playoff successes that he's had in this postseason. And I think that that's probably why I put him in that fringe superstar category. But the consistency now is definitely like he's had multiple games in this series and it's not even over where he just feels like a non-factor for 3.5 quarters. Like, so I think that's clouding my judgment, but I think that's completely fair. Wherever people, I just hope we have an honest dialogue about like where exactly he is rather than people just trying to push him further down and readjust everything after this series is over. Like, give the Thunder their flowers, but you don't have to push the Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton so far down. I'm hoping that it just stays honest through the offseason. It's going to be a long offseason, so like a lot of conversations will ensue after this. But let's move into the Desmond Bane trade. This is the biggest piece of NBA offseason news, I would say, so far. Maybe outside of what is going on, or we don't even really know what's going on with the Kevin Durant deal in Phoenix. I mean, that's just all feels like rumors, but we'll see what happens with that. But the Desmond Bane trade for the Orlando Magic, they gave up 4 unprotected firsts, a pick swap, Cole Anthony and KCP, sent them to the Memphis Grizzlies for Desmond Bane. Definitely had a lot of people shocked in a sense. First thoughts on this trade? Do you have a problem with it for the Magic?
Not particularly. Like you look at the Eastern Conference and then you see what's coming out of the Eastern Conference right now. I think that if you look at the Orlando Magic team, especially with their top 3 players at this point, including Desmond Bane, I think that like they're competitive with any of these teams that are like currently competing for the Eastern Conference. Like the Celtics are without Jason Tatum now and have their own problems to deal with the salary cap. The Cavaliers look like one of the best teams in the NBA at points, but then also come up short in the NBA playoffs. And the Pacers and the Knicks, nobody really even saw them getting there at the beginning of the season. So who's to say that the Magic can't be right with them towards the end of next season? I think that this might have been a little bit of an overpay, and by might, it probably was a bit of an overpay for a career like 20-point per game score. And like obviously he brings just so much more to the table than that, especially given the fact that the Magic needed some type of 3-point shooting this year. I think that like who runs the point now is definitely a question to be had, but I think that if you look at the top 3 players on this team, you can put them up against almost anybody in the East at this point.
Yeah, their core right now, all between 23 and 27, I think is a very promising core for this Orlando Magic team. And I think that they will be able to compete against a lot of the teams at the top of the Eastern Conference. We're going to see kind of, I think, a mode of 2019 Eastern Conference play where a lot of teams, okay, LeBron is out. We got to go for it because we got it. We got 1 year. Like we're in a win now mode. We're going to try to go for this championship. And you see what the Toronto Raptors did, obviously, and they were able to take it. But like, I think with the Celtics, they're going to deal without Jason Tatum in the upcoming season, and they're going to end up dealing probably Kristaps Porzingis or something, or figuring out their cap. So feels like it's wide open. Maybe you could do something that the Pacers did this year, and I think that's the goal. I think it's positive. It makes them good and ready to win right now. It takes care of their biggest issue, which was they were 31% from 3 last year, and they were the worst 3-point shooting team in the last 10 years. They were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the last 15 years. If you also include like the Bobcats team that like in the lockout shortened season, like barely won. I don't even know if they won 10 games. Like they were horrendous. So it fills an immediate need. And I think it's just a matter of what the Eastern Conference looks like right now. I did also kind of want to mention some of the specifics of this trade deal as well. I think it's important to recognize that the 28 and 2030 picks for the Orlando Magic, probably regardless of this trade, what this organization is looking at weren't going to be valuable. They are not going to be good. That's the whole goal of making a trade like this, is that those are going to be 27 or 28 or 26 range instead of fringe lottery stuff or in the middle of the first round. Like, so I think that that's important. And when you really look at the picks that they gave up, number 16 this year is pretty good, and then the Phoenix pick I know is hurting a lot of Magic fans because they're like, oh my God, what did we give up? Because Phoenix could be dreadful this upcoming year. So I think those are important to recognize as well. But they gave up a couple picks, I think, for the Desmond Bane deal. Like, I think a couple of these selections in the first round aren't that good.
Yeah, do you want to touch on some of the players that they gave up to? Because I feel like some of the people were like, you have like some people on the end of the spectrum who say that this is like a net positive, just losing those players, and then some people were completely outraged on losing the players that you guys did.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had an extra thing to say about the picks, because it does seem like a slight cop out to say that those picks are going to be bad because it is a few years ahead.
Yeah, maybe before we did that, I give my final thoughts on that too. I think that like your point is pretty spot on. I don't think that any like picks within the high teens to like early 20s and later than that really pan out to be anything successful. Obviously, you have your stories like Jokic and just players in general that like you hit on, but like how the majority of the time that isn't going to happen. And if the Magic are even just going to be in the playoffs, they're not going to be in the lottery, obviously. So keeping those picks, like they're in win now mode. They're not in, oh, we need to get somebody in the draft mode. So I think that those picks definitely like wouldn't be as valuable. And I think you make perfect sense in saying that like if you can get a player that is a proven 40% 3-point shooter, is one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the NBA in the last decade, and then you also get with not only with his shooting but also his consistency on offense, where he's averaging 20 points again for each of the last 4 seasons. Like, that is a player you want to bring in and hopefully get your team to the point where they're not in the lottery and those picks don't matter. And then you can touch on the players now.
Yeah, so KCP and Cole Anthony. KCP practically robbed the Orlando Magic of their money last season, and I think he was definitely going to be a target that they were going to try to offload. He was a net negative, I think, for just about the entire season. Cole Anthony, fan favorite. They drafted him. He was bad to start the year, ended up in the doghouse, and then saved this team through the month of December when Franz and Paulo went down, and was an integral part of them trying to claw back from when they really got bad, like around the All-Star break, and played very well in the Hawks playing game. But there was a bit of a come to reality moment in that series against the Boston Celtics where he was just unplayable. And I think that they really like what Anthony Black can do. And I think that's a name that like isn't really talked about as much, because his breakout season, or anticipated breakout season, is going to be next year. And I think that that's a big part of this. So they looked at both those players and said, if we envision ourselves getting beyond the first round and potentially going all the way to the NBA Finals, who is on this team? And I don't think Cole Anthony or KCP were two players that were going to be on that team. And I think that they ended up being negatives for a good portion of this last season. And you save some money, and you obviously have to save some money, because you're making the deal for Desmond Bane, who's under contract for a fair amount over the next handful of years. So you're going to have to make a deal. You're going to have to end up giving players away. And I think overall what Desmond Bane can do outweighs what both those guys did last year combined by a lot. And I think it's another important thing to also recognize is that when a team makes a trade before the league year, they are dealing with the contracts of 2025-26, but they are dealing with the cap of 2024-25. So they also had to decline the team options of Gary Harris and Corey Joseph. So they're giving up 4 players. Now, Corey Joseph and Gary Harris, if you keep those guys on the team or you decide to bring them back for the same amount of money, which, is just kind of like fairyland, like those guys are gone essentially. But if you did, the team would still be under the second apron in a sense, and you wouldn't have to aggregate those contracts, yada, yada, yada. But you did. And so you ended up having to also give up 4 players because you're dealing with the 2024-25 salary cap, which hasn't, which is the only cap that's set, because you don't have the 25-26 cap yet. You only have estimates. It's anticipated to go up 10%, whatever. You get the cap situation. It's kind of complicated, but like they ended up having to give up those 4 guys. And I'm still going to sit here and say what Desmond Bane can bring is more than those guys combined brought last year, all 4 of them. So I still think it's a net positive. It's just about who you think is going to be on this team in this rotation when this team is competing for something beyond the first round. And they're actually competing to win a series. And I think it's a good deal. They're going to have to make some moves on top of this, because they still need some other stuff to be shored up. And they're going to have to also figure out their cap situation beyond what they just did. But I think overall it's a positive. And I think I also wanted to say, I don't know if you had another take here, but like, I also wanted to say that the Memphis Grizzlies knew exactly what the Magic needed. They desperately needed a shooter, and not that this was out of true desperation, but the Grizzlies knew they need exactly what Desmond Bane can bring them. And this 28 and 2030 pick isn't good. So, or they probably aren't going to be good. So they knew that this price was, they could kind of string the Magic along here to get a little bit extra. And I think from the Grizzlies perspective, they certainly played their cards right, and they're setting themselves up for a really good retool, I think, for a team that's trying to get a lot better than they were last year.
Yeah, no, I think that you covered the majority of the points that I think that are general talking points, and I think you did it pretty well. I think that from the Grizzlies,
thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, no problem. From the Grizzlies' perspective, I think that this current iteration of their team isn't looking to be that competitive, honestly. I think that the ceiling for this team is maybe the second round of the Western Conference Finals. So just looking into the future, you still have Jaw, you still have Triple J. There's still both young players maybe being able to retool around some of the younger picks that you're going to get. And then on the Orlando side, like we covered, shooting was just one of the aspects that they're completely terrible at. They brought KCP in to maybe help that out this year, and he was just too inconsistent at points. The season was essentially a net negative for you guys. And then Cole Anthony, obviously fan favorite, but how much was he really providing? You mentioned the Celtics series, basically played himself out of that series and made himself unplayable in that series. So when you're just looking at it in totality, it feels like too many aspects of it to say that they didn't overpay a little bit. But in general, when you start looking at it, when you start getting into the nitty gritty of it, it feels like the Orlando Magic got exactly what they wanted out of this trade, and the Grizzlies were able to find some sort of retooling. They probably won't keep KCP, and maybe they keep Cole Anthony as a good guard for the future, but we'll see how that even works on their side of that.
I'll say another thing really quick, because I just love that we're actually talking about the Orlando Magic in a sense that this is one of the bigger stories in the NBA. Moving forward, I think that they're going to pick up the team option for Mo Wagner. I think they want him. Even though he's coming off of injury, he was their best player off the bench scoring-wise. They don't have a front court scorer right now outside of him. I think that he's more than just Franz's brother. This guy was a legit kind of six-man contender when he was playing at that point in the season. He was really valuable for them. I think they're going to keep him, and they're going to really roll with that core for the next year. I think they're going to end up moving Jonathan Isaac, another fan favorite. So Magic fans are probably going to have to buckle up again. I don't think a deal is going to happen before the new cap is set, because it's just too complicated right now. But I think they're going to figure that out. They're going to keep Mo Wagner, and I think this team looks really good going forward. Obviously, they're in a much better spot than they were last year. So I think that they like where they're at. I guess that kind of covers the two topics that we were going to talk about. I know that there's some other stuff going on in the realm of sports. So if you've got anything, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, so very light on this, just because of the fact that I have been in and out of these playoffs just in general for the Stanley Cup. But the Florida Panthers have won another Stanley Cup final back to back, and they've reached the Stanley Cup finals each of the last 3 years. Unfortunately, they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights in the first one, but still, it's bordering on dynasty talk. So I think that that should be highlighted at least a little bit, just because the fact that the NHL playoffs do bring in millions of viewers, and for Florida to be kind of the owners of hockey for the last maybe half a decade is kind of interesting, just because of the fact that there's not even snow in Florida, and obviously it doesn't really matter because you're bringing in people from all over the place. But from Tampa Bay's dynasty or mini dynasty in the early 2020s to now the Florida Panthers in the mid 2020s, Florida's just become more of a hockey state, and I think it's cool to see that how much it's grown, because you see kind of just casual fans and everybody just coming together. And obviously Florida hasn't had the biggest hockey tradition in the world, especially down in South Florida, Tampa a little bit more. But I think it's still fun to see it. And anytime that your home city or just hometown team can win a championship, it's a lot of fun. So go Panthers.
Shout out hockey, man. Hey, we're doing that thing.
We did hockey.
Yeah. I think there's two things for me. One, bro, Stephen A. Smith, man.
He's on a tear.
Yeah, I don't even know. I honestly think it's really good television. It's entertaining. It's not good for sports journalism in a sense, for the main face of this entire industry of sports media to be under fire. But whatever he was saying about Memphis and players not wanting to play there is a bit of a mess. But I think it's interesting. And then he was playing solitaire, I think, during the finals, and was like, this was during a commercial timeout. Like, you can multitask. Like, we'll get off my back. I think that's real, but at the same time, like, I think it's good television, but it's not good for the industry, but it's fun. And then also I wanted to talk about just college football and what happened to the game that we loved. I really like the fact that we have a salary cap now. It's not the wild, wild west. I think that's a really good positive. But there was another thing that dropped yesterday, and it was that conference commissioners have decided to start over on determining the 2026 college football playoff format. It seems like they are going to change this almost every single year based off of how they're going to how this sport adjusts itself. The Big Ten and SEC initially wanted 4 automatic qualifiers, each with 2 and then each with 2 each to the ACC and Big 12. However, the ACC and Big 12 pushed back, so they're just back at it again, and like maybe looking at a 16-team playoff or something along those lines. The deadline to have a 2026 college football playoff format is December 1st. Obviously, we know like they made some adjustments to 2025, which I think are overall positive. But man, they're gonna keep at this. What is this sport gonna look like in 2030? Like, I don't know if we're gonna recognize it. And I gotta be honest, I don't want 2 mega conferences. I don't think that that's really good for the sport at all. The good positive things about college football really kind of revolve around the fact that it's also not the NFL. It's not, these divisions. It's got these rivalries, and it's, the atmospheres and everything. The more corporate and everything it gets is, the worse it gets. And I don't think that has anything to do with paying the players. They deserve every dime that they possibly can get. But with the way that the conferences are moving, man, just seems like the sport is it's going to be completely different, unrecognizable in a handful of years.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting because like some of these conferences, like the bigger conferences, like they don't have like all of the teams to like do this and make it entertaining for us like a 12-week season either. Like the Big Ten still has like Purdue and like Nebraska and like teams at the bottom of their like conference that like I don't want to watch on a weekly basis. Like I like watching Ohio State, I like watching Michigan, I like watching Oregon, I like watching USC, but like and on the SEC side, like you can go through like a essentially the majority of that conference, like if anything from top to bottom, that is the conference where you look at and you can say, but even Vanderbilt, Kentucky, like Mississippi State, like towards on an off year, sometimes like Ole Miss can be like a little bit disappointing to watch. Lane Kiffin's turned that program around, but still, like there are teams where I'm like, oh, I don't really like care about you on a consistent basis. So like, am I gonna get bored? Like, and like if this is consistently just Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan every single week, and that's all I care about watching. Like when you have like good teams from outside conferences or small schools making a name for themselves, or just in general like more competitiveness around the landscape of college football, it's just more fun that way. And like you have like just. I don't know. I just don't like I feel like it's pretty consensus that like a lot of people don't like the way that this is going, and I think that it could be really like detrimental to the sport in general, because I think people would just like start like getting tuned out, especially the fan bases of smaller teams. Like they're just like, why would I even care about college football anymore? Like it's so tailored to everybody else.
Yeah, and also like if you stack these conferences, like there's going to be years where it's like, there felt like there were no upsets, or it feels like the top teams still didn't play each other because these conferences have 25 teams. So like, how could they possibly play each other? I mean, maybe they would play each other in the conference championship game, but then like, are they going to meet again in the playoffs? Like, I almost feel like the bigger these conferences get, the less there is a need for the playoffs. Like, just because some years you're going to have them play against each other, and then other years you're going to be like, dang, like we didn't even get to see a good regular season game against both of the top teams, or maybe we finally saw in the conference championship game and they played, they settled it, but it didn't mean anything because they have to turn right back around and play in the playoffs. I think it's a lose-lose situation for them getting as big as possible. You have to find that happy medium, and I think we're there. Like, I really do, because conference championship games did not mean much at all last year. And they were only just simply there for seeding, and then obviously they meant something for some of the other conferences, such as the Big 12 and the ACC, because those teams ended up getting in because they won their conference in a sense. But both SMU and Clemson ended up making it in. So it's like, it is what it is. It's a bit of a mess, and it's so tough to project too, because there's so many moving parts. It's like tough, like the NBA cap. Like, I can't even wrap my head around it. I think you got professionals around here that still struggle to do that. But I think we got everything right. I think the next time we're going to talk, the Thunder are going to be the NBA champions too.
Yeah, that sounds just about right.
Also, just one more thing before I get out.
Let's do
If
it.
the Thunder win this game, I called this series exactly how it went.
Yeah, we both did.
Well, no, I called it by game.
Oh, nice. Thunder in
Like,
6 was.
I said like, oh, I think Indiana might. Well, maybe I didn't say Indiana might take game 1. No, I think I did. But I said Indiana up 1-0, Thunder tie at 1-1, and then Indiana takes. I just knew. I thought Indiana was going to be up 2-1. I think that was what I said. I'm gonna have to take a look because I swear I'm close, bro. I'm close. And then I said Indiana's gonna be up 2-1. Thunder are gonna win the next 3 games, and then they win in 6. I think that was my original pick. I swear. I think I have to take a look. I wish I would have taken a look before I said this, but I think I called this as it happened. But I think we're gonna leave it to that. That'll be the last point that I make. It's a half point. But this has been the Big Little Podcast. I'm your host, Previty. That is Andrew Greig. We'll see you guys next time.